Hello folks, and welcome to another Richard Head Longbows video. As you can see here, we've got a couple of yew staves. These are Self Yew staves and Self Yew bows, or they certainly will be eventually, and that's the whole point of these videos. These are my what's happening today in the workshop videos, where you get to follow along with me with a silly camera on my head, and there's also one over there so you can get a bit of a better view, and some other b-roll footage I've done, which you've probably just seen, of these nice billets here that I'm going to be working on. It's a new year, so well, yeah, this is what we're going to be working on in that new year. I hope you all had a good New Year's celebrations and all that. So let's take a look at these materials. One bow is, or one stave at the moment, is slightly longer than the other. I'll put those up on the tiller there so you can see that. And also the shape of them is slightly different, as is the problem, or should we say, as somebody said to me, the challenge of working with yew and this sort of material. As you can see there, one has a shape where it goes one direction and one limb, and the other limb curves the other direction, which is just the natural shape of the wood. And the other bow, the slightly longer one, actually has a more even shape already to begin with. The bigger one and the slightly longer one is the one I'm going to be working on for now, so I'm going to put this one to one side over here. And this is the one I'm going to be working on. And I don't think in any of my videos that I've featured a Self Yew bow. I've shown you lots of other videos where I'm working with yew bows that are perhaps backed. I can put those up on the cards there and in the description box below if you're interested in seeing those other videos where we work with yew. So this is a Self Yew bow, and as with most of these videos, I try and aim the information at people who, well, don't necessarily know much. So what we mean by Self Yew is that this is one piece of wood. Basically, it isn't laminated. We haven't put any other bits of wood onto it. In fact, this isn't even jointed at the handle, so this is one long stave rather than two billets that we would sometimes joint together. So this is one piece of wood. The two different colours you're seeing are part of the same wood. It's the sapwood and the heartwood. On the other bows that we've done, the other yew bows which I mentioned, which I had up on the cards there, are ones that perhaps where the sapwood hasn't been very good, hasn't been of good enough quality, so that we've taken that off and replaced that with something else, say bamboo or hickory or whatever. So that's what we're going to be working on. Now, the other thing that you need to look for in yew, the difference to say, apart from the fact that it's from one tree and one piece of wood, where you're dealing with these natural undulations that you get in this sort of material, is things like knots. I'm going to show you some other b-roll footage I took of the knots that on here and the different ways you have to deal with them. These group here, these more would describe these as pins rather than knots. Those can probably be left, in the sense that I can remove material from there and they will just disappear. This one here actually goes through from the side through to the top there, or certainly looks like it's going to. And obviously, as we take wood from the side of this and the roughing out process, which we're going to be doing today, that may reveal more of that knot and could cause a problem. So I may have to leave extra wood around that, so I'm going to circle that in pencil so I know where that is and can keep an eye on it. This other knot here again is slightly large as well. I don't know where that one's going. It probably goes through to the bottom, though it hasn't come out the bottom on there, so I'm probably going to have to leave wood proud around that. And the rest of it looks not too bad. There's one or two other little ones. There's another one here and another one down there, which again looks like that might be coming out the side. So there's a few there that I'll mark up and make sure that I leave a bit more meat, a bit more wood around them, so that we can strengthen those areas. Now, if you're wondering why we're strengthening those areas, again, I have done videos on dealing with knots and the wheres and wherefores of doing that sort of thing. I'll put it up on the cards there. But essentially, things like knots can cause what we call crystals, which are basically compression fractures, where there is an impurity in the wood, if you like, where there's an area that is more likely to collapse in on itself, and can cause us a problem when we're tillering the bow. Tillering is bending the bow, preparing it for it to be suitable for shooting. and obviously as the wood moves, anything like this can potentially cause a problem. So by leaving extra wood around it, so when we rough the bow out and we get it to the D section, the shape that we want this particular bow to be, this area will have more wood left around it, therefore it won't bend as much. It does mean when we put it up onto the tiller, when we start bending the bow, we do have to take account of those extra stiff areas, which can mean the bow ends up well, looking a bit more characterful, and is often the way of yew bows and just the way that they end up looking. One of the first things I'm going to need to do on here is the back. As you can see, some of the bark is still on here, so I'm going to use the scraper and I'm going to get rid of the rest of that bark. And there may also be a few areas where you may be able to see on there where they're slightly picked up, because a lot of the initial roughing out work, apart from where we use the bandsaw to cut this out, a lot of the other work will be done with an axe to do a lot of the shaping. So we're going to start by removing the rest of that bark. Now we've got our handle section measured here, so I'm going to avoid removing any off there for now, just so that we can keep this centre line here and the handle section measured out, so I know where everything is. The second line along is the Buchanan dips, so we've got a handle section, it then dips down and then tapers out from that area, so that we end up with a stiff handle. So this isn't a war bow, this is a English longbow, so a target bow, so it has two working limbs. So I'm going to avoid removing any of that for now, so I don't lose any of the pencil lines. Now you may notice here I've changed over to using the scraper here with two hands, so I can actually get that into this dipped area. I mean, this is something, as I say, moving from laminated materials that you will notice if you haven't used Self materials before. You're following the undulations, this shape, the uneven shape of the bow as it goes in and out here. So finding things like flat tools like this, you may miss out on sections, so you have to actually start bending that and getting that in there. Whereas the flatter sections with one hand, I can probably do that. And other sections, say where it dips down, where the tool starts missing those sections, you may need to start getting a bit more ingenious with the way you use the tools. Okay, so that's the bark off there. And now I'm going to round off this section here, so we're going to create the shape of the back that we want. I'm actually going to clamp this. Put this in here. Now, one of the things you have to watch with yew, it is a much more softer wood than a lot of the other materials that we would normally be using, say a lemon wood, which would normally be on the belly here. It's quite easily markable, and I think you can see me marking that with my fingernails there, whether that will show up on the other camera there. It's quite easy to accidentally pierce or mark the bow. I don't know, that's probably not going to show up on there. Oh, you can probably just see that where I'm marking it with my finger there. So yeah, the reason I mention this is be careful with tools. You really need to think about what you're doing, make sure your tools are sharp, etc. You could easily gouge something out of yew, and particularly on this particular type of bow that I'm making here. So particularly with these sorts of dimensions, this is a bow for a lady, so any small slip up or damage or anything like that could potentially ruin it, and you'd be starting again. So one of the other things you may need to do when clamping it, when you're doing any work, when you want the bow held down, I usually use a piece of leather or something similar, so you're not actually ruining the timbers there when you're putting it in the vise. Always worth bearing in mind. See, that was the dip earlier on the back here, so there's still some imperfections in the wood there, still a slight lift. So I'm just using the file side of this rasp here. Okay, so I've managed to get that there. So we're down to the one growth ring that we've got there, and we've got rid of that lift that was there. So I can carry on getting rid of this rough edge there that I made with the rasp. Okay, I can do the other side there. To know how much you're taking off here, obviously I'm sort of doing it from experience really, there isn't a measurement as such that I use, but I've probably gone down twice the length with the rasp there to get rid of that initial squared corner, and then just taken that rounded off from the back and then rounded off from the side. So it's not a lot, it's a fairly small amount, and if really you are just thinking about removing that corner and rounding that edge off, as I say, there isn't a specific measurement that you have to do. The only real measurement is taking account of how much sapwood is on there. If there's an awful lot on there, don't be fooled by it. You don't have to fold, if you like, this the sapwood into the heartwood here. It's relatively thin, so the amount that I've taken off here, the amount of rounding I've needed to do on the back here, does match from, say, a third of the way in on the back, and has pretty much gone down to where the line of where the heartwood is. But as I say, you might be using a piece which has much thicker sapwood on it. Don't feel you have to go all the way down to the heartwood. It's more about making this corner neat, rather than removing too much of the back. You still want the back essentially to be flat. The D section, the shape that we're still looking for, is still very much where the back of the bow is flat, and the belly is this nice arced section. So you don't have to remove these corners and end up with a tiny back. You're still looking at that fairly broad back as far as the shape of the back of the bow goes. Hope that makes sense. Okay, here's the bit at the end that we missed. It was on in the clamp there, so let's just do that bit. Okay, let's check to see whether we've got any unnecessary marks on here anywhere. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Okay, yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Okay, so that looks okay. Let's try the scraper on here, so we'll get rid of any of these tool marks. Find it's picking up, just change directions. Just simply go the other direction with the scraper here, and you'll find that usually does the trick. Okay, a little bit in the end that was in the vise again. Okay, right, that's looking pretty good. As you hold it in different lights, you'll obviously be able to see whether you've got other marks in there or anything left in there that you need to get rid of. Now you may be wondering why I'm being so fussy about the back here. Now the back is very important. Once we do get it up onto the tiller, which as I say is the thing up here where we're going to bend the bow, the back of the bow is the bit under the tension. So if there are any imperfections or mark that you've left in here, I mean, fairly deep marks, minor marks really aren't going to affect it. And to be honest with you, any work you do now on the back you won't have to do later on, because we really aren't going to be touching this. This isn't going to be the areas we work on when we're tillering the bow, when we're getting the bow to bend. We're going to be working on the belly. So essentially you can finish the back if you like. I could now sand it, but I will obviously accidentally mark it when I'm bashing it against here or something. That other marks and things will appear over time in it, so there's little point wasting my time doing that. But essentially we're not going to be doing any work on this back once we've got this finished. So get it as good as you can now, and as I say, saves you messing around later on. Okay, I'm going to do the other end now. I won't bother. I'll zoom on to the next bit, so I'll see you in a second. Okay, welcome back folks. I have done both the limbs there on the backs, and now we're going to be working on the belly here. So I've clamped it in, used my bit of leather again, and I'm sorry if I sound funny, because I'm working with yew, and yew is poisonous and dangerous, and don't argue with me, it is. Put a mask on, and you need an extraction system and everything. Okay, don't risk it. So on with the show. So now, as I've mentioned in my other videos about working with yew, yew is one of those woods where it doesn't necessarily like being worked with bladed items. Now I mean things like this, like the spoke shave. I'm actually holding it upside down just so you can see the blade there. Now you may find this picks up, i.e. the blade goes underneath the material and just gouges out great strips of the wood, which means quite a lot of the work you may have having to do with a surf form, or in this case a rasp. Now I'm going to do a bit of the work with the spoke shave just to show you, and also hopefully we'll be able to get some of it done, because obviously it does speed up the process. So let's have a go, and bearing in mind as we go down the edge here, we're going to be avoiding the areas that I've marked for the knots here. There's one on the corner here which should disappear, so I haven't bothered marking that one. Hopefully that one will go. That is a fingers crossed job, and we will see. So we're going to start from the handle here, and working out towards the tip, which is in this support at this end. Okay, avoiding the knot and getting rid of the knot there. And obviously in this handle section we don't need to worry too much if we have got any pins or knots, because the handle's not going to be doing anything. Like I explained earlier, we've got the Buchanan dips, so we've got these areas that come down sloping away from the handle, so that we end up with a handle section, a section that doesn't move. So although there's a few pins and knots there, we can hopefully ignore those. If they're so big, and you know, you may end up one with where the actual pith comes out, they might need plugging simply for structural reasons. If it's really big and you can't avoid it being in the center, you may have to do something about it. But in general, most knots and pins in the handle itself you can ignore. So this is the one that we've got here. So as you can see, I've been using the spoke shave but I'm avoiding that area, so we're going to allow that to build up. So I can work the rest of the edges here now. Okay, so that knot there on the corner, on the side I should say, pretty much disappeared. I'm pretty confident that will go. Now you can see there, you see where that picked up out of here, this section here, and that's left quite a big gouge. See what I mean? So I've got to the limit now of where this is going to let me work with the bladed tool. So I'm going to move over now to the rasp. Now don't worry, I haven't ruined it, but that's what can happen, and obviously it can. So if I carried on, we're getting more and more near to where the working shape of the bow is. At the moment we're removing very much rough wood we're really not going to need in the final shape of the bow. So I've got down to that limit now. I'm reluctant to use this tool anymore, so I'm going to put that to one side. I'm going to move to using the rasp. So I'm going to carry on with that, okay? Okay, you see that taking shape now? So we've got the handle section there, square there, rounded off here, going along, and we've got the knot. Okay, so that's starting to, you can see where hopefully you can see that that's sort of a lump there now. And along here to this knot, that's basically disappeared. If we do a bit more work there, that'll probably go. Okay, that's one side there pretty much done. So let's turn this around and let's do this other side here. Okay, let's check whether we've got any knots to take account of. Yeah, I think we've got one. The one here that seems to go from the top there and actually has gone through at that sort of angle. So that you can see that, and it's come out here. You can see that there. So we're probably going to have to leave that, because if I take this wood away here, is obviously what I'm going to do, same as I did the other side there. We are going to probably expose this and make it even weaker, make it more visible throughout its length there. So I'm going to leave some wood around that one. And the rest of it's fairly clean. There is another smaller one there, but it's very, very small. It'll probably disappear. The rest of that side's not too bad. So we'll carry on and see what we get. you see that or hear that pick up there. That's what you've got to be wary of, and that's what you've got to take note of. You'll hear it and you'll feel it in the tool as you're moving. If it starts to feel rough and abnormal, you'll know that it's starting to pick up there. They're probably reaching the limit again. And if you can rotate the tool away from the meatier areas, so you're taking off just these corners. The more corner you take off, the thinner the piece of wood. So you're taking these very thin pieces off, which you can get away with. It's when you start getting that shape coming in, you're taking off larger and larger pieces, that you're going to end up with this picking up. Okay, and again I think we'll move over to the rasp now. Okay, that is our basic shape done. Let's take that off there and see if we can look at that in a bit more detail. There we go. So, there's our squared shape of the other limb, and there's the limb that we've rounded off. So we've got rounded back, and now we've got the rounded belly, so we've got the D section, that D shape. And there's our knots that we've left proud. Okay, there's the one big one. There's the one that goes from side to side. We've left that proud, left a bit of a lump. And the other ones that were on here have pretty much disappeared now. I've even forgotten where the other one was. It was up here somewhere. Where was it? I think it's pretty much gone. Oh, there we are. That one on the side there has almost disappeared, and obviously there's going to be a lot more work done to this when we do the tillering, so a lot more wood's going to come off. Now all I've got to do is the other end. I shan't bore you with that. So that's the other end that I'm going to have to do. So thank you for watching, folks. That's the basics of the roughing out of the Self Yew bow. If you want to subscribe, please do. If you want to follow along and see what happens with this bow, in fact it's going to be a pair of bows, as I say, coming from the same material. That's the other one there. That's the squared one there. You can see how different that looks now there to the one that we roughed out there. So yeah, if you want to follow along, please do subscribe, and if you want to check out some of the other videos that we've done on yew bows, then please do. And yeah, hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell, and you'll be let known when we're starting on this next section of this bow, which will hopefully be the Tillering. Okay, see you again, folks, and thanks for watching.